Hey guys, welcome back. In the last few videos we created the Stickies application interface, the HTML and CSS, and then in the last video we created the actual note object. Alright, so we did quite a bit of code. We also connected to our database note test, and then we created our set and get methods, alright, to set certain properties and methods of our object. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is continuing to work in the prototype. Alright, so basically we're extending the note object to include all these methods. The next thing we want to do is add a close method. Alright, so this particular method is going to run when you close out the sticky note. Alright, so basically we're going to say close, which is going to be ran as a function, and we'll pass in an event. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say this dot cancel pending save. And we're going to create this cancel pending save function in a minute. Basically it resets a 200 millisecond timer on the save action. Alright, and it's actually run every time a key is pressed. So whenever you press a key, the text is getting saved into the database. Alright, so next we want to what do we want to do next? We want to create a variable called note, which is going to represent the object. So note equals this. Alright, now what we want to do is run a database transaction. Alright, so we want to take the database variable and we're going to say dot transaction. Okay, we went over this in the first section of this chapter. This is going to take a function. Okay, and we're going to pass to this function a tx variable, transaction, and we can now use that to run the execute SQL method. Alright, so you can say tx dot execute SQL. Actually, only the S should be capitalized. Alright, now what we want to run here is we want to delete the sticky based on its ID. Alright, so we'll say delete from, and if you're familiar with SQL, then this should be fine for you. The table is going to be called my stickies. Okay, so delete from my stickies where ID equals question mark. Now the question mark, we're going to pass in a value for that, and that's in the next parameter is going to be the ID. So it's going to be note.id. Okay, so this question mark is replaced by this, and then of course we want to remove the note from the interface. So down here we're going to say document dot body dot remove child this dot note. Alright, so the next function we're going to create is called save soon, and basically what this is going to do is it's going to call the save function to save the actual note in the database if the user hasn't pressed a key within the last 200 milliseconds or whatever we specify. Alright, so this will be a function alright, so save soon, we're gonna again call this cancel pending save, and create a variable self which will represent the object, and then we're going to say this dot save timer equals set timeout. Okay, so if you've worked with JavaScript for a while, then you know what save timeout is. Basically, it's going to run something as frequent as we specify. In this case, it'll be we'll run the save method every 200 milliseconds. Okay, so set timeout, which is going to be a function, and say self.save. Okay, so that's going to call the save method. Function. Okay, so the next parameter after the function is going to be the time in milliseconds, which is going to be 200. Alright, this should have a comma. So that's the save soon method. Now we'll create the cancel pending save. So here we'll delete the save timer. Okay, so I'm going to say if not save timer, and in this, okay, then we're going to return, and then we're going to say clear timeout, and we're going to pass in the save timer, this dot save timer, and then we'll delete this dot save timer. Alright, so we're just going to clear out the save timer. Alright, so next is going to be the save function. Alright, again we're going to call this cancel pending save. And let's see. We're going to check for a property named dirty, alright, in the object, and if there is, then we're going to update the timestamp first. So I'm going to say if dirty in this, and that's what this does. We've seen it a few times. We've seen it here as well. We're just checking to see if this property is in the object. Alright, so if it's in our code here, if it's set. Alright, so if dirty in this, and then we're just going to say this dot timestamp is going to be equal to new date dot get time, which will give it the current time, and it'll be updated. And then we want to delete the dirty property. So this dot dirty. Alright, and then underneath here, we'll create a variable called, a local variable called note, equal it to this, which is just the object as a whole. And then we're going to call the transaction to update the note and the timestamp. So db dot transaction, okay, and the transaction function, okay, we're going to pass in tx. Alright, so the transaction will be tx dot execute SQL, and our query, which will be update update my stickies, which will be the table name, and we're going to set note and the timestamp. Remember, we passed the actual values in after to replace the question marks. Okay, note timestamp left top. Okay, so the left and top positions, and z-index. Alright, so these are basically the fields we're going to have. And you want to make sure we have a quote. We want this wrapped in quotes. So the fields are note, which will be the text, timestamp, left top, and z-index. Alright, so we want to add to this. Alright, so we're going to update these fields where we're going to say where the ID equals a question mark for a placer, and then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to set the values down here. Okay, so the values will be wrapped in brackets, and the first one is the note or the text, and then we're going to have the timestamp, then the left, note.left. You want to make sure that these values are in the order that's here. Okay. Okay, note left, and whoops, I put a dot there. We don't want that. And I'll put a space here to make it more readable. Okay, so we get the left, and then we have note.top. Okay, and then note.z-index, and the ID, note.id. Alright, so that looks good. That's our save function. We want to make sure that we want to add our commas after each method. And when I say method or function, they're the same thing. It's just that in object-oriented programming, a function is usually called a method, so I use them interchangeable. So sorry if that is confusing. Alright, so that save function or method basically, if you already had a note and you wanted to update it, that's basically what it does. We're going to add another function to actually insert a new note or create a new note. Alright, and that's going to be called save as new. So I'm going to say save as new. Save as new. So we're going to set the timestamp to the current time. So this dot timestamp is equal to new date dot get time. Alright, and we're going to create that note variable. Variable note is going to be equal to this. And then we're going to run our transaction. Okay, so I'm going to say db.transaction. Put our function. Okay, function should take tx as a parameter, and then we can use that tx to execute SQL. Alright, so in here we're going to say insert into my stickies, and we're going to put in our fields. Okay, so ID, note, timestamp, left top, and z-index. Alright, so those are the columns we want to add. Alright, so now we want to put the values. So after this parentheses, you want to put in values, and we're going to use our question marks here. So that will be ID, that will be note timestamp left top and z-index. Okay, and then after the quotes we'll put a comma, and now we want to put the actual values, which will be wrapped in brackets. So we have note.id, note.text, note.timestamp, left z-index. Alright, so that should do it for the save as new function. Alright, so save actually updates a note, save as new inserts a new note. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, we're going to create the Onmousedown function. Okay, Onmousedown function, and we're going to pass in E. Okay. Now this function is going to take care of our drag and drop when we hold the mouse down. Alright, so we're going to set a variable called capture, which will be equal to this, and then we're going to say this dot start x is going to be equal to e dot client x, and then we're going to take that, we're going to subtract that from the left offset. So this dot note dot offset left. Okay, so this offset left, what it does is it returns the number of pixels that the upper left corner of the element is offset to. We also got to do it for the top. Okay, so this dot start y. Okay, so we have y for the up and down, and x is for left and right, which you probably know. Okay, and then we'll change this to right. Alright, and then we want to say this dot z-index is equal to plus plus highest z. Alright, so what this is basically doing is whenever we click a mouse down onto a note, it's going to bring the z-index up so that it goes over the other notes. Alright, and actually I wanted to define these variables, this capture and highest z. I meant to define those up here, so let's just go way up, and actually we'll go all the way up right above the note constructor and just set these variables. So variable captured, we're going to set to null. Variable highest z we'll set to 0, and variable highest ID we'll set to 0 as well. We'll be using that to tell what the latest note is, the most recent. Alright, so back down here, and I'm going to set a variable of self so that we can use that. And we're going to test to see if the mouse move handler is within the object. Or we're actually going to test if it's not. So if not, mouse move handler in this, Alright, so if it's not, then we're going to say this dot mouse move handler is equal to function, and we're going to pass in E, and then inside the function we're just going to return self dot on mouse move, which we will create. We're also going to say this dot mouse up handler equals function E, whoop, not 3, E, and we're just going to return that function, which is self dot on mouse up. Alright, and then right underneath that if statement we're going to create the event listeners. So document dot add event listener. I'm going to check for the mouse move event. Whoop, we don't want to actually write the word event. Mouse move, and then actually let me use double quotes here just to be consistent. You can use single or double. Alright, so mouse move, we're going to say this dot mouse move handler. Okay, this dot mouse move handler, and then true. Okay, so true is because we do want to capture it. Now I'm going to copy this and do the same for mouse up. Mouse up, and then mouse up handler. And that should do it for the Onmousedown function. Now we want to create the onmouse move. Alright, so Onmousedown is when you click and hold the note, and onmouse move is obviously when you move it around. Okay, so onmouse move function. Okay, onmouse move function, we're going to pass in the event parameter, and we're going to check for that captured variable. Alright, so if this is not equal to captured, then we're going to just return true. Okay, and then underneath say this dot left. Okay, so the left property is equal to E dot client X, this dot start X. Alright, so this is basically going to let us move around the note and pixels. Now this E dot client X, it's an event attribute that returns the horizontal coordinate of the mouse pointer when an event is triggered. Alright, so that's how we can get the position, well, the X-axis position of the mouse. Okay, and now we want to get the Y position. Okay, so we'll do the same thing, except we're going to say top, and this will be a Y, and this will be a Y. Okay, so basically that's how we get the mouse position, and then we're just going to return false. Okay, alright, so we have on mouse down, on mouse move. Now we want on mouse up, which will be when the button is released. Alright, so let's do what we want to do is remove the two event listeners, the mouse move and mouse up. Alright, so document dot remove event listener. Okay, and this is going to be mouse move. This dot mouse over handler. Alright, and I'm just going to copy this and change this to mouse up. And then we're going to save it. We'll save the note. So this dot save, and then we'll just return false. Alright, so that's basically moving around the note. Now we want to deal with a click. Alright, so if we just click the note. Okay, so we'll call this on note click. Actually, you know what? I used the equal sign a couple times here, and we don't want that. We want the colon. Okay, no equals. Alright, so on note click. So basically what this is going to do is we want it to bring the clicked note into focus and place the cursor at the end of the text. Okay, so it's going to be a very short function. We're just going to say this dot edit field dot focus. Alright, so that'll bring it into view. That'll put our cursor there, and then we're just going to say get selection dot collapse to end. Alright, so it'll move our cursor to the end of the text, the end of the selected text. Alright, so next we need our commas. Okay, so now we'll do on key up. We're going to set this dot dirty. Remember, we tested for that earlier to see if a key was pressed. So here we're going to set it to true, and we're going to call this dot save soon, which we created above. Alright, so that basically takes care of the clicking, the moving, and all that. I'm going to stop the video here, and then we'll create the in the next video we'll create the function to create a new note. We'll create the loaded function, which will actually create the My Stickies table, because we haven't actually done that yet. So we'll do that next.